Hi, this is Mike. I'm going to try an experimental series of YouTube videos. This is the first, and what I'm going to talk about is an essay I wrote a couple years ago about how the U.S. Military Railroad expanded the City Point and Army line to Hatcher's Run after the Battle of Hatcher's Run. And what this essay I wrote a couple of years ago was driven by is a log kept by a man named John Morgan, who was a civil engineer working on the City Point and Army Line Railroad. So I wrote this essay a couple of years ago, and what I'm going to start with in this first episode is just reading the foreword to the essay, and along with it I'll present some images that may be of interest. So here I go. Operating a military railroad during the mid-19th century was a dynamic business. The objective was to provide logistical support to armies that could range in size up to 120,000 men and almost half as many horses and mules. Such was the importance of steam-powered transportation that the armies rarely moved far from rivers and railroads. Sherman took a huge gamble in late 1864 when he ventured away from his long supply line to march through the enemy's country from Atlanta to Savannah. Both Grant and Lincoln were opposed to the idea, but Sherman was able to convince them to let him do it. He knew that the fall harvest was in, and he believed he could feed his men and animals as he went. That he was successful probably says more about the sorry state of the Confederate Army facing him than anything else. The basis of this document is a transcription of part of a diary kept by the engineering staff of the United States Military Railroad at City Point during the siege of Petersburg. Though the book is not signed, I was able to determine authorship by comparing the unique style of handwriting with some other signed documents in the National Archives. That the entries that are subject of this essay were entered by John Morgan, Assistant Engineer for the United States Military Railroad at City Point. Morgan was a civilian employee of the Quartermaster Corps. Nothing else is known about Morgan, other than this diary and a few other documents that were preserved in the National Archives. I could find no other traces of where he came from or what he did after the war. This and several other U.S. military railroad diaries are now held in the collections of the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The handwriting is not always very legible, but I have done the best I could to transcribe it. The diary entries are printed here as originally composed with abbreviations, and most of the extremely inconsistent capitalization is left intact. The meaning of the numerous abbreviations that Morgan used is on page 4 of this document. The siege of Petersburg lasted from July 1864 through April 1865. This work is focused on the diary entries for the months starting with the Battle of Hatcher's Run, February 5, 1865. After this battle, the railroad was extended to better support the new positions that the Army of the Potomac had taken. Each set of facing pages has a single day's diary entry on the left side, along with photographs, maps, and explanatory text on the remaining available space, as well as on the facing page. The photographs, maps, and explanatory text were chosen to eliminate the diary entries, as well as the overall challenges faced by the quartermasters supplying the Union armies facing Petersburg and Richmond. Sources for all images and much of the contextual information are provided at the end of this document in an appendix. The author hopes that this detailed dive into the life of the U.S. military railroad construction corps is worthy of the reader's time. Many books that cover railroading and logistics in the Civil War, but it's the author's opinion that none of them reveal what day-to-day life was for a typical Civil War railroad engineer. It is hoped that this approach will give the reader a better opportunity to understand the challenges faced by the civil engineers of the U.S. military railroad and how they felt and reacted to ongoing events. To me, one of the most fascinating aspects of this diary is how the civilian railroad engineer, John Morgan, interacted with his bosses and various military authorities. When reading this diary, keep in mind that for Civil War railroaders, an engineer could be either the man operating a locomotive or a man supervising construction and/or maintenance of railroad facilities of one type or another. The engineers referred to this U.S. military railroad diary of the latter type. Well, this is just the introduction. I hope you follow through, and some of the next week's edition should be more interesting. Have a great day.